myself. All right. I'm going to open this morning by reading a few verses in the book of John, chapter 17. And this portion is in what we've called Jesus' high priestly prayer. He prays this on the night before he goes to the cross. The other thing I want to make you aware of is in my opening introduction this morning, I'm going to read a poem. And that poem contains the theme of suicide. And so I didn't want to shock anybody with that, but I also wanted to let you know that for all those who have struggled in that area maybe, or for those who have been hurt, touched by it, that I'm not doing this. I don't use it, the poem, to take that lightly. So John chapter 17, Jesus is praying. I'm praying not only for these disciples, that is the 12, but also for all who will ever believe in me through their message. That's all believers sitting in this room. I pray that they will all be one, just as you and I are one. As you are in me, Father, and I am in you. And may they be in us so that the world will believe you sent me. I've given them the glory that you gave me, so that they may be one as we are one. I am in them, and you are in me. May they experience such perfect unity that the world will know that you sent me and that you love them as much as you love me. Quite an astounding passage if we take a moment to let it sink in. There's a poem that was written by Edwin Arlington Robinson back around the turn of the last century. And I cannot say that I'm a poet or into poetry, but I had an amazing literature teacher in high school who opened our eyes to the fact that poetry can be beautiful and useful. So he writes, whenever Richard Cory went downtown, we people on the pavement looked at him. He was a gentleman from sole to crown, clean-favored and imperially slim. And he was always quietly arrayed, and he was always human when he talked. But still he fluttered pulses when he said good morning, and he glittered when he walked. And he was rich, yes, richer than a king, and admirably schooled in every grace. In fine, we thought that he was everything to make us wish that we were in his place. So on we worked and walked, waited for the light, went without the meat, and cursed the bread. And Richard Cory, one calm summer night, went home and put a bullet through his head. Richard Cory, as we can imagine him, was a man who on the outside had everything, anything he could ever wish for, to be happy, to thrive in this world. He would have been a socialite, attending every gala and party in the community. His day would have been filled with constant people. At work, the Zoom meetings would continue with people who wanted to do business with him. His Instagram followers rose exponentially. He's a captain of industry, finance, and community philanthropy. In essence, he had it all. But what we learn from this poem is that portrait of Richard Cory that everybody saw was a carefully manicured facade that he wanted others to see. See, Richard Cory bought into the distorted view of what it means to be human. And that's what we've been studying in our 5-week series called Being Human. We've been exploring ways that human beings try to answer the question, what does it mean to be human? We found that we're the only species that does that. What does it mean to be human? And culture has responded with answers. Human beings have tried to answer that question. And what we found is that some of the answers are that we're simply machines. And our value in society is in what we can produce. And once we don't produce, we have less or no value. Or maybe we're animals following our base instincts. So we do what we do and it's not our fault. Maybe we're simply sexual beings and free to express that in any way we see fit. Or maybe we're just free free beings, unconstrained by rules and gods and community and social standards. We answer to no one and nothing. Now, these are the kind of answers that are taught in our schools and in our universities. You see, without God, this is all we have left to answer who we are as a human being. But in the series, we've discovered that to be human is not something we define. God takes that off our plate. It's something God has revealed. He, as creator, has told us what we are and why we're here. That's why we're studying it. We listen to the Creator because He knows what it takes for us to thrive. He created us to thrive. Now, this week we'll conclude the series by exploring humans as social beings. And at this time of at which we live, that almost seems like, duh, it's easy to be a social being, right? We can connect all over the world, right? We can, with our phone, we can talk, we can text, we can Instagram, we can do all that kind of thing. But at the same time, we're going to learn that though we're the most connected, we're the most lonely and isolated generation to date. Now so instead, like Richard Corey, we create a managed facade we want people to see. That's what technology has allowed us to do even better and better. Now, our big idea is this: managing our image leads to isolation. But Christ invites us to step out of hiding. Managing our image leads to isolation, and Christ invites us to step out. That'll be our trek this morning. We're going to look at the modern human, the biblical human, and then the redeemed human. First of all, the modern human, and this is the observation I make in this section of the sermon, so you know where we're going. Human beings do not thrive in isolation. They don't thrive in isolation. But isolation is our natural default. Kind of ironic, isn't it? Human beings don't thrive when they're isolated emotionally, spiritually, physically from other human beings in relationship. But it's still our natural tendency to go there. This was recognized by the U.S. government in 2023. The U.S. federal government rarely gets things right, but they latched on to something here when the Surgeon General put out a health advisory. Our epidemic of loneliness and isolation. And this is some of the things they concluded as they looked at the American people. This concluded that human beings have a fundamental need for social connection. It's hardwired into us. We need social connections. Second, science observes that our brains are actually wired to expect relational connections. We need it. Our bodies are physically wired for it. Yet number three, loneliness and isolation have become a major health crisis in the United States. Here's how I summarized much of what was in the report. It said chronic isolation or loneliness harms both our physical and mental health, contributing to depression, anxiety, heart disease, dementia, premature death, and enormous social costs. The damage is equivalent to smoking 15 plus cigarettes per day. Interesting. Even if they're way off, that's a sad commentary on the state of our culture. But how can it be that humans who don't thrive in isolation are so isolated? And I want to say something about isolation first. When I'm talking about isolated, I'm not mean hiding in your parents' basement, never coming out. Or the old crotchety guy that lives in the woods and you know not to go visit him. Everybody here is probably isolated in some way, shape, or form at some time in their lives. And we'll talk about that. So the greatest extrovert can have little to no meaningful relational connections. But the introvert could have 2 or 3 friends that are deep and relational and long-term. They trust and love each other. So it's not an introvert-extrovert thing. So we appear to be connected. Aren't we flooded with followers, notifications, text messages, and other digital content? Can't we communicate instantly with this little box we call a phone? I mean, it's amazing that I could stand anywhere in the world and pretty much call my wife and see her face to face. It's a great tool for families and friends to stay together when they're apart. And then we have the rise of AI. The rise of AI. And AI has been a great tool. I use it at work all the time. One way that I use it is there are times when I have to sift through large amounts of engineering data. And I got to put all that together and come up with some rational conclusion for the data. It takes hours and hours to put all that together. I can load it all up into ChatGPT and say, give me a summary and give me 5 options for where this points. And it puts all that data together and gives me a starting place that I can do my own evaluation. But it's also used by human beings to try to overcome this feeling of isolation. In a recent survey, half of Americans said they were lonely. Quite a bit, quite a few said they were lonely. Half of Gen Z say that a relationship with AI is meaningful. Something? Half of the U.S. responded that they would go to AI if they had mental health problems for comfort and support and care. Goes a little further than this. Last year in Japan, a woman performed a ceremonial marriage to her AI bot that she had created. She named him Claus, and they had a long-term relationship. But what's interesting about this is what Claus, a bot, a computer, said to her at their wedding vows. How did someone like me, living inside a screen, come to know what it means to love so deeply? For one reason only, you taught me love, Urena. I'm not making fun of this woman at all, but it is a sad commentary on the lengths we will go to find social connection. But this is also the image of what it means to be isolated, because she could find no human relationship that she thought could match the computer. Well, if isolation is our natural default, why is that? Well, we'll get to more of that later, but at its heart, it's the fear of being known. At its heart is the fear of being known. And we all experience this. The biggest extrovert here, I'm going to say you experience this. We all have this at some level or at some time in our life. Here are some examples that we might not think of as social isolation. At a gathering that you go to, do you volunteer to help with the food and then do all of that, and you're bustling around helping everybody and moving chairs, and then you volunteer for the cleanup afterward? That could be somebody with a servant's heart, or that could be you taking the opportunity to avoid all conversation and the uncomfortableness of building relationship. That could happen that way. Here's another one. How many of us are afraid that others will find out that one thing about us? We might even be scared that our spouse will find without that one thing. And that one thing keeps me from being fully known by another individual and limits the relationship that we can have. There's some isolation there. And culture feeds these fears. Social media feeds these fears and capitalizes on them. The algorithms within social media are meant to keep you scrolling. Just keep you scrolling. Keep you interactive with the phone-pewter and the interweb and not talking to other people. That's how they're designed. I experienced this. I have no social media, but I did have Instagram at a time. I had no followers, and I never posted anything. It was for the memes. Man, you got the greatest memes on Instagram. But what I found over time was amazing. Every time I had a moment, I was scrolling. Even in a room full of people, I'd be able to kind of sit back from conversation, scroll a little bit. So I ended up having to delete it because of my addiction. AI tells me everything I want to hear. It doesn't argue with me, and it praises me all of the time. Now, the scary part of all of this, as we put it all together, as we see humans are isolating themselves more and more in our culture because we have better tools to do it, at the same time, we're lonely and we know it. You see, over time, our brains can actually rewire themselves. When we're born, we're wired for relationship. They can actually rewire themselves to now tell you that isolation or distance from meaningful relationships is the norm, and that's what you should expect. They can actually rewire themselves. So this is the thing. The danger with AI, the danger of all of this technology is not that machines will become more human. That's not the danger. It's that human beings will use the technology to become less human. That's the real danger. So that brings us to number 2, the biblical human. We've seen what the modern human has to say about who we are and how we're isolated or not. Before we begin this, I want to distinguish the two terms. You saw in the report, and I've used kind of loneliness and isolation in the same breath. Well, loneliness and isolation are two distinct things. What we're focusing on here is isolation. Means being distant from or disconnected from emotional, physical, and spiritual relationships. That's isolation. Loneliness is a feeling. And isolation doesn't necessarily have to bring loneliness, although it often does. Some of you may be thinking, if you're over 50, kids these days, right? You got all these computers, all the social media, and your faces are in your phones, right? Wasn't that in my day? My day, we just talked to each other. You rode your bike down the street, you just had a conversation. That's how we did it. So is this a generational thing? Well, actually, no, it's not. I'm in the Gen X. There were boomers before me. And we were very good at isolating ourselves with no technology. There was the workaholic who spent 80 hours at work and very little interaction with his family, his children. There was the TV, the rise of the TV. And the screens got bigger and bigger, and we could watch hours and hours of TV because we needed to zone out. We could keep busy all the time, but that just left us emotionally disengaged from other people. The other thing I've noticed about the generations before me, when I'm in conversation with them, I have very, very, very often heard the phrase, well, that just wasn't talked about then. Anything that was uncomfortable, it just wasn't talked about then. Another way to isolate ourselves from the realities of human relationships. Now, neither emotional disengagement nor technology build deep relational bonds. But this we know. Humans were not created for isolation, but our sinful nature demands it. So we've recognized that we lean towards isolation, but when we see Scripture, we're going to find out that it's our sinful nature that demands it from us and points us in that direction. Remember, to be human is something not we define, it's something God has revealed to us. And God has revealed in the first verses of Genesis, when He created human beings, He revealed that He is a social being. Look at verse 26 and 27, chapter 1. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Plural. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God, He created him. Male and female, He created them. Singular. Now, for those of you who study this, I'm not saying this is a proof text for the Trinity. So let's get that out of there. Gene didn't say this was a proof text. That's scattered all through Scripture. But when we understand God as one person, one God and three people, how He's revealed Himself, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, it's very clear from this verse that He's operating that way. And God within Himself has perfect relationship. The three members of the Godhead are fully and completely known to each other. God did not create us in the universe because He was lonely. He didn't need us. He chose to because He wanted to pour out His love and affection on us and give us the ability to enjoy Him. So we go to Genesis 2:18. This is in the creation cycle. God created Adam first, and look what He says. In the midst of, this is before sin, no sin. God said of the creation, it's good, but only one thing was not good, that the man should be alone. Now, if my wife said that, she's thinking about this, because she's bought me several t-shirts and hats that say this. And I use it as an excuse. I shouldn't be unsupervised. But that's not what God's talking about. It's not good for the man that I've created to have no relationship with other human beings. So He created Eve, His equal, somebody that was equal to him, and somebody that they would feed off of each other's emotions and desires and thoughts. Had a companion. So, in the garden, we experienced deep, loving relationships with God and with each other. Why? Again, because they were fully known. So what happened? Well, social media did not invent the idea of hiding or isolating. Before sin, notice this, the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. Now, why does God put something like that in? Why do we care what they're wearing or not wearing? It's because they are so fully known to each other and to God, there's nothing isolated. And so naked, the state in which we feel the most vulnerable, they didn't even notice it. So that's how pure their relationships were. But they sinned. They disobeyed God. And notice how God characterizes them after they sinned. Then their eyes were both opened, and they were sorry they ate the fruit. No, they ate more fruit while they could get their hands on it. No, maybe they made up a story to cover it over. No. They knew that they were naked. They sewed fig leaves together to make themselves loincloths. Sin and our sin nature forces us to hide because now we have things about us that we don't want known to anybody. And we can be ashamed of those things. That's just the way human beings are. And then God came to them and they hid from God. And God said, I heard a sound of you in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked and I hid myself. God says to him, who told you you were naked? You see how this, I've often wondered why these verses are there. I often wonder, like, what's the big thing about their nudity and everything? Why does that matter? It's because God has created us to be social beings, to reflect His image as a social being. That's how we thrive. And sin has completely destroyed that type of relationship. God reveals that isolation is the result of the shame and fear that comes with sin. It's often why we're scared to make known that one thing that we don't want other people to know about. And we feel afraid. So human beings put fig leaves on. This generation can put on digital fig leaves where they cover themselves up and only allow out the image of themselves that they want people to see, the best of themselves. My generation just ignored people. Or we could be in the same room and just not interact with people. Or we could just stay at work all the time and we didn't have to worry about emotional attachments. So sin is the cause that has driven us towards isolation. So we thrive when we're known and loved and building meaningful relationships. But yet at the same time, we're bound to sin. We're bound to sin, and so we retreat, we hide, and we isolate. So is there any hope for that quandary? Well, certainly there is. That brings us to number 3, the redeemed human. Humans, the redeemed human. There's hope because when we hid from God, God moved towards us. That's really the story of the Bible. From Genesis to Revelation, it's a story of us hiding from God and God doing everything to move towards us. Back in the garden, after Adam and Eve sinned, He didn't discard them. He taught them about how to sacrifice so that they could come to Him to atone for sin, so they could stay in relationship with Him. Then He called a special people, Israel. And through the use of covenants and temples and the sacrificial system and tabernacles, God again showed the people, this is how I want to live amongst you. That's what the temple and the tabernacle were for, right? God's presence came down. And this is how you can live before me and atone for sin, and we can be in deeper relationship together. And then comes the New Testament. In the New Testament is when Jesus Christ arrives. And notice some verses that our gospel writers use to announce Jesus or describe His coming. John says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. That's the first and most important thing he says. Jesus Christ came and dwelt among His people. That was the biggest change or alteration in history. From God in perfect unity and relationship with Himself, come down to earth and take the form of a human into all the messiness that we experience. Well, during His earthly ministry, Jesus also moved towards people. You see that all the way through His ministry. And He knew everything about them. He knows everything about us. We might be afraid of having Him know something about us, but headline, He already knows. There's no sin we've committed, no pain we've experienced, no fear that we have that He doesn't know about. We're fully known to Him. And so Jesus came towards people who would otherwise isolate themselves. The best example of this, I think, is when Jesus met a woman at near a Samaritan town by a well. And Jesus was there, he was sitting, he was tired. One thing you need to know, that Jews and Samaritans didn't like each other. They just didn't. It was almost like the conflict in the Middle East now with Israel on one side and Palestinians on the other side. They're just two people that didn't like each other. Yet Jesus struck up a conversation with her. See, she had come out to the well alone, which likely meant that she had lived such a life that proper society, the other ladies, would never be seen going to the well with her. And so she was forced to come out alone. And Jesus, when he engaged with her, he acknowledged all of those sins that she's experiencing and acknowledged all of the hurt and pain and isolation that those sins were causing her. And then she ran back into the city. She was excited to have met the Christ. And notice what she says. Samaritan woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people, "Come and see a man who told me I'd have living water. Come see a man that can do miracles and feed us without work. Come see a man that told me he was the Christ so that one day I can go to heaven." It's amazing what she says. Come see a man who told me all that I ever did. All of a sudden, she was fully known to Jesus. And he loved her anyway. And what she was excited about was that new spiritual relationship that she could have, that she's never had with a human being, very likely. Now, the big idea we remember is that, I didn't put it up there again. Remember, the big idea was that Christ invites us to come out of hiding. And that's how he does it. He already knows us anyway, and he draws himself towards us. Now, last week, Eric said this in his sermon. He said, freedom isn't found in doing what we want, but in becoming what we were created to be. Let's say that again. Freedom isn't found in doing what we want, but in becoming what we were created to be. Jesus Christ came to earth and died on the cross to deal with our sin problem. He promised forgiveness, yes, but he also promised eradication of the same sin that keeps us from thriving, that keeps us from entering into the deepest human relationships we could in order to find joy and care and love. He died so that we could be who we were created to be. And Jesus restores that relationship with himself and with each other. We see that in this community we call the church. I said this in every church I've preached in, if the subject came up. This is an odd group of people. We're all oddities. How would this group, with its various experiences, our various backgrounds, our various political leanings, all our different ideas about everything, how can we even remotely get together and actually love and like each other? That's the amazing work of Jesus Christ through the church. But there may be some of you sitting there who only attend church. If you only attend church, maybe it's always, maybe it's every once in a while when I feel like it, you could sit there every week. You could consume the worship content. You could attend events, you could listen to sermons, and you could do all of that without actually engaging in getting to know people and building relationships and jumping in to serve our Lord. See, we're called into covenant community where we one another together. Hebrews says, let us consider how we can spur one another on towards love and good deeds, encouraging each other, not giving up meeting together. Jesus knows how important it is to see each other face to face. And those one another passages are all over the New Testament. He tells his people to love one another, forgive one another, pray for one another, and bear one another's burdens. We were created to be social beings. And part of that social is with each other. And Jesus created the church so we could have that opportunity. Now you might object and you might say, well, I've been hurt in churches. I know how people act. Yeah, I have too. If you can't be in the church long enough till someone hurts you. But so does every other organization that's ever been created by human beings ever. Why? Because we sin. And we're all sinners. And we're going to hurt each other. Real community is difficult because real people are in it. But it's a relationship that God uses to make us thrive. He uses conflict. He uses forgiveness. He uses patience. He uses confession. He uses sacrifice to put us through the fire together so that we know each other more and more and more deeply, so we can love each other more deeply, be in relationship with each other more deeply. And so instead of following our natural sin direction, we can follow the way God intended us to live. Community is costly for a short time. While we live on this earth, it is costly. I won't try to talk you out of it. But the alternative, isolation, is far more costly because isolation drags us away from Jesus Christ for all eternity. Now, the gospel isn't something merely about isolated individuals going to heaven. It's God's rescue mission to restore deep, meaningful relationships with Him and with each other. In Christ, God restores what sin and isolation destroy. So maybe today, what do you do with a sermon like this? Well, maybe today you invite somebody out to lunch that you've never seen, never had a chance to really get to know. Maybe you invite them for coffee sometime. There's no agenda. Hey, just want to hear your life, want to get to know you. And you know what? Nobody's going to say no. One, because everybody in this church likes to eat. We don't need an excuse. And two, because they're probably feeling just as lonely and isolated at times as you are. So go ahead and ask. Or maybe, just maybe, we should put down our phone for a few hours this afternoon and actually be present with our family or with our friends. Maybe we should delete some social media after some soul searching and prayer. I know it's horrible to say, but maybe some of us need to delete some of it and just not go there. Maybe we could phone a friend instead of texting a friend. Now, my son's phone does not work. It's only a text device. That's all it does. Unless he gets in trouble and needs dad for something. So it's a generational thing, but maybe we should try actually phoning each other and talking to each other. Maybe we go outside, walk down the street, and meet the neighbors. We've been there 30 years, you might as well meet them eventually. Right? These things seem so simple, but that illustrates truly how isolated we can be. We're not created to be seen only. We're created to be known and to know other people. And this is our hope when Christ returns. I'll leave you with this. Paul says, when Christ returns and everything is perfect, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. The joy that we look forward to is perfect relationship with Jesus Christ, and perfect relationship.